next speaker is Denise Marshall, who's group coordinator of an organisation called Birth Companions. And those who are old enough, and I'm aware that that doesn't apply to everybody in this room, may remember a time when Anne Widdecombe, before she was on Strictly Come Dancing, was Minister with responsibility for prisons. And the absolute shock that hit many of us with the news that women giving birth in hospital were still on occasion being shackled to their beds. Which just seemed, it's the sort of thing that in the European Parliament, if it were happening in Iran or somewhere like that, there'd be all sorts of resolutions, there would be absolute outcry. But this was happening within here. So, Birth Companions exists to improve the whole experience of pregnancy, birth and motherhood for women in prison, so they're better able to care for the baby after birth, assuming, of course, that they're allowed to keep that child with them.
So we're a small specialist charity. Volunteers are women who are experienced in birth and in pregnancy and parenting. And we've been working in Holloway now for 14 years. We work with the pregnant women, the women giving birth, women looking after a baby in prison, but also women who've come to prison and been separated from the baby, left a baby at home. And we also work with some women post-release, because we realised that some women were being released out into the community, either heavily pregnant or with a new baby, and they might actually have less support than they would have had if they'd have actually given birth in prison. And the other speakers have actually talked about those sorts of difficulties, being homeless, not having their benefits, and so for some women they're in quite dire situations. We worked with 87 women last year, and the groups who particularly need support in that situation are foreign nationals. A third of the women in Holloway are foreign nationals, and also young women who are sometimes have difficult relationships with their families. So those are the people who are quite often perhaps don't have any other support when they're going out to hospital. Our aim is to really reduce the stress and isolation of women in pregnancy and around the time of birth and who are parenting in Holloway, to improve their experience and give the mum and baby the best start possible. I think all women, when they're going through pregnancy and coming up to birth, feel anxious about various things, but for women in prison there are lots of additional issues. They worry about whether they're going to be safe in prison. Will their baby be safe? They may be on remand and not know actually whether they're giving birth in prison or whether they'll be released before birth. There's a lot of uncertainty. They only tend to find out the month before their baby's due whether they'll have a place on the mother and baby unit. And then if you're at home pregnant, and there's something you're worried about, you can ring your midwife or just go to the hospital if you think you're in labour. So women in prison worry, will they be unlocked in time, when they go into labour, and will their family be called, will their family arrive in time? They're also, most of the women are mothers as well, so they're worried about their other children. Will their other children resent the baby who gets to perhaps spend time with the mum in prison? Will there be more sibling rivalry? Will the baby be accepted by the wider family when they come out? How will the baby bond with their dad? So these are all worries that women in this situation have. We visit once a week and we run a couple of groups. We run a group for the pregnant women and a group for the mums, and it's a sort of safe space for women to express those anxieties and women to support each other. We also cover antenatal topics, and we can do birth plans and help women to, talk about supporting them at the birth. So I'll just give a couple of examples of women we've supported recently. So Dolores wanted, I've changed the names to make it, and slightly changed details, but Dolores, her partner was in prison. She was having her first baby. Her family were abroad, but she has had a cousin who had said she'd come to the birth in London. And so Dolores wanted a birth companion until her cousin arrived. And we often do that. And so she went into labour and I went out to be with her. It was quite a long labour. And then another birth companion took over because her cousin hadn't arrived yet. But Dolores was coping really well with all this and felt very supported in the birth. She gave birth and we did photos, which is something that we offer to do for women after the birth. Women aren't allowed a camera in prison and they can't bring money to the hospital because it's a sort of escape risk. So the other thing we could do for Dolores was get her a phone card. So she spoke to her dad shortly after the birth and that was really important for her. And then with the photos, she was able to send photos to her family abroad and also to her partner in prison. So I think she felt very positive, even though her cousin was delayed, but then her cousin sort of was able to visit postnatally. So that's very often the sort of situation we're involved with. Another woman, Han, really didn't speak any English at all. She had a very complicated pregnancy and had to go into hospital for several days before she gave birth. The hospital did arrange interpreters, but it was very much to sort of relay the medical information for her. She was really pleased to have birth companions, even though we couldn't really communicate very much verbally. You know, she sort of held on to her birth companion and was pleased when someone came to see her. And we were able to buy her several phone cards, and she phoned her mum in Vietnam. And you could just see the relief, you know, on her face, really, the emotional support she was able to get through that. So those are very typical, really. Once women have given birth and come back to the prison, then the parenting and breastfeeding group on the mother and baby unit again provides a sort of safe space, really, for women to raise their sort of worries and get support. And then post-release, the other day there was a woman who was for some reason just being very suddenly released. She had an hour to pack and she hadn't really, I don't think she'd actually been in London before or in Britain before, but she was travelling to a city, a long train journey to stay with her aunt, and that was the address she was being released to. She was actually due to give birth. I mean, the prison luckily contacted us and said, could we come along as well and see her onto the train? So we did that. She had 6 bags, and we were able to talk with her about, you know, what happened if she went into labour before she'd managed to register at a hospital. So she had lots of worries about those sorts of issues. In fact, she did give birth 2 days later, and everything went well. And so we're sort of in contact, which is really nice. Although we generally only support women in London post-release, but we're keeping phone contact. The feedback we get is very positive. Women say they felt calmer and, you know, less stressed, knowing that they could have someone with them for the birth. They wouldn't be on their own. That the actual birth support helps. One woman said, you know, I do believe I would have had a very different birth without a birth companion. Some women say it's like having family with them. One woman told us about how she'd had 4 babies and had difficulties with breastfeeding, but with this 5th baby, because of the support in the parenting group, she had enjoyed breastfeeding and she felt very sort of empowered by that. I won't talk about the issues for women in prison because that's been covered already. But you might say, well, why support this particular group? And it's because, you know, women in prison are a very vulnerable group. There are lots of health issues, lots of social issues, and research has shown that women who have received support from an experienced birth partner in labour do have less complications and better mental and physical health outcomes for the mum and the baby. There's also less likelihood of postnatal depression for mothers who aren't experiencing stress in pregnancy and birth, or experiencing less stress. Breastfeeding, if it's going well, can actually mitigate some of the effects of postnatal depression because of the hormones that are released while breastfeeding. And there's research that shows that women in prison actually respond very positively to health promotion. They're more likely to take up advice than the control groups in the community that were researched. So we've very much found that women are very keen to get support and information around this time, and that it is a time when women can actually make big changes in their lives, because pregnancy is a time when women reassess things and they look at their lives and they have new priorities. And there are 3 women that we've been in contact with from 2 or 3 years ago who've very sort of clearly done this, and they all had sort of drug histories and previous children who'd gone into care, and all with their family, and through support that they received from various agencies, they were able to sort of break that pattern, and all 3 of them are sort of doing very happy with their parenting and very positive about their new sort of roles. So we know there's a cycle of reoffending, and women tell us in Holloway often that one of their parents was in prison, and they're really keen for that not to be repeated on the next generation. So our vision is really that all women in detention get support around this crucial time,